So thank you all for being with us, and it is, I must say, a great pleasure to once again share the stage with my friend, Deputy Prime Minister Qubad Talabani of the Kurdistan region in Iraq. And I think this makes it our fourth on-stage encounter, right? Which speaks either to a certain persistence on our part, or simply to the fact that the conversation around Kurdistan has grown more relevant with time, which I believe is true. And indeed, you're the epicenter of attention, this year in Delphi, partly because of the ongoing conflict near your borders, which I would naturally start. However, I want to start with something you said in your recent interview with Channel 4, which I found most interesting. So you said, quote unquote, the Kurds are more than just fighters, we're diplomats, we're negotiators, who navigate all kinds of complexities here in the heart of the Islamic Middle East. So Deputy Prime Minister, welcome.
Thank you.
Who are the Kurds and what's your role in the modern world?
Thank you, Vasily. I want to thank, obviously, the Delphi Economic Forum, my good friend Simon, for having me back here. You're not bored of me. This is a good sign. I wanted to also thank everybody involved with Delphi for hosting the first ever Delphi Economic Forum in Slemania. It was a great success. We had many speakers attend, and we look forward to hosting the second one in June. So this is a plug for the Delphi Economic Forum in Slemania too. We look forward to having you and hosting you there. And there we can also talk more about who the Kurds are. I don't think we have enough time today in our panel for me to give you a full history, 7,000 years of who we are and what we've done. But right now we are in the epicenter of many issues. As an Iraqi Kurd, we are stationed between Iran, Turkey, Syria, and the rest of Iraq, which is, as you're all following the news, been quite active lately. We do get labeled tough fighters, and we have put up a good fight over the last several decades, but we are more than just the fighters. We are engaging on strategic levels, politically, economically, through diplomacy channels, through back channels, on many fronts, but all towards one objective: stability, prosperity, development, moving away from war and conflict and instability and tension. We're trying, but geography isn't helping us on this mission.
So how is the war in Iran affecting the Kurdistan region?
The war has affected us significantly, being so close to us and being between two entities that we have deep ties and relations with. It has affected us economically, it has affected us from a security perspective, but it is also affecting us psychologically as a people, part of a country that has lived through many, many wars. That said, we are not just sitting idly by. We're doing whatever we can to ensure that the dialogue continues between the United States and Iran, and that we welcome this ceasefire, and we're hopeful that this ceasefire will create the climate and the space necessary for there to be a lasting deal that will finally bring peace and prosperity to us.
But is there any risk that Kurdistan could be drawn into that conflict?
We have said from day one, we've been very transparent, we are not part of this war. We do not want to be part of this war, and we will not become part of this war. We will do everything we can to protect our citizens, to protect Kurdistan, to protect the stability of the Kurdistan region, what we have built over many, many years. That said, we are willing to be a bridge, not a battlefield. And we have deconflicted on many instances over the past 2 months, and will continue to play a positive role to that effect.
I'm very tempted to dive more into it, but we don't have time. So I want to move a bit to Syria. How all what happened in Syria is happening in Syria, affecting Kurdistan. How do you assess recent developments
Look, the landscape in the Middle East is shifting. It's constantly shifting. But one thing is constant. There are a group of people called the Kurds. We're in Iran, we're in Turkey, we're in Syria, and we are in Iraq. There is a peace process ongoing now in Turkey, by the government of Turkey, the opposition parties in Turkey, the parliament in Turkey, and the majority of the political factions are supporting a process which has ended a 40-year war between Turkey and the PKK. This is a positive development. We support this development and will work to make sure this is delivered. Syria is more recent. The government of Syria is still standing itself up. We would like to see the Kurds of Syria integrated fully into the society, into the government, into the economy, into the security services of Syria. The Kurds of Syria have been at the forefront of the fight against terrorism. They've fought side by side with the United States and other international partners in fighting ISIS. And the reward for that bravery should not be isolation and should not be exclusion from the state. On the contrary, the reward for that state, for that role, should be having a leading role and a seat at the decision-making table in Damascus.
So, geography is not always helpful. However, I mean, you very often describe Kurdistan as being strategically positioned in the Middle East. So what this means in practical political terms today?
I think if you looked at the Kurds 30 years ago, we were a victimized community, and then maybe others may have defined us as a problem, as a nuisance. But today we're none of those. We've moved beyond the sense of victimization of the past. We are focusing on economic development. We're focusing on being a bridge, supporting a peace process between Turkey and the PKK, supporting the integration of Kurds of Syria into the new Syrian Republic. I would like to say that we were helpful in preventing the Kurds of Iran from being significantly hurt in this conflict between the United States and Iran. And at the same time, we're playing a pivotal role in standing up the new government in Iraq, a government that will respect its constitution, adhere to the principles of federalism, and ensure the policies of the country serve all of the people of the country, but also puts Iraq on the right footing, which I think it can be.
You know, most people, perceive Iraq and Kurdistan as a consequence as an oil-rich nation. So energy is a core topic. But what's your strategy, especially when it comes to gas? Because I know for a fact that Suleimania, the city you're coming from, is one of the richest places in gas. So what's your energy? What's your strategy on energy?
Oil is essential for Iraq's economy, which is why when the Straits of Hormuz is closed, the economy of Iraq is severely damaged, as well as Kurdistan's. While we would all love to get away from oil, we keep talking about it and get away from oil, the reality is we're not getting away from oil. But what we want to do is use oil as a source of revenue to support other sectors: agriculture, tourism, agro-industries, agro-tourism, many other industrial areas where it has huge potential for growth. You mentioned gas. Yes, Kurdistan is gas-rich and Suleimania is very gas-rich. For us, the strategy here is to power our local economy, power our electricity sector, power our industrial growth. And our strategy has been from day one transferring gas to wire. We think we have enough, we know we have enough gas to become a net exporter of power, whether it's to serve the deficiencies in the rest of the country or the region that we are living in. This is our strategy, and we are working steadfast to implement that.
That's the most interesting part of it, moving beyond oil. We've seen, even the GCC states, are trying to diversify their economies, and I'm sure, you're doing the same. So what's your strategy towards that end?
It's complicated but simple. The complication is we're a sub-sovereign within a country which is constantly in transition. But the strategy is simple. We have the most fertile land in the region, which makes us very conducive for agricultural development, for agricultural growth, for development of agro-industries, not just to serve Kurdistan, but to serve the whole country, not just to serve Iraq, but to actually be an exporter of foodstuffs, of vegetables, of fruits. Greece is very famous for its olives. Our olives are pretty good too. Maybe not as good as Greece's, but they're pretty good too. But our pomegranates are very good. Our honey is very good. Our walnuts, very good. We have many products, figs, many products that we have been lucky to taste in Kurdistan that with the right kind of investment, with the right kind of strategy, the right kind of partnerships, like the ones we're building here in Greece, Kurdish products could be making the international markets very soon.
You have a new development when it comes to regional development. Can you tell us a bit more about this approach?
So since 2003, since the liberation of Iraq, and we still call it the liberation of Iraq because for us, we were victims of Saddam's brutality. Since then, we have been building our economy. We have been building our infrastructure. But now we're entering a new era. We feel for the first time in a long time that we have a strategy. We know where we want to go. We know how we want to do this. It's just about the partnerships now. It's about building the right kind of partnerships, breaking out from the internal Kurdish dimension, building partnerships with countries like Greece, with other European countries, with the United States, and with regional powers to reach our potential. And I think now we're at a point where our public expects more from us, because for years we've been talking about potential. We can't just be a potential. We have to be the real deal. And that just requires moving beyond the rhetoric and actually getting things done.
You know, I've been in your city, Suleimania, more than 7 times the past years, and I've seen that you have tremendous industrial capacity, you have power plants, you have steel industries. I mean, you're building up very quickly. I mean, you've done also the foundation to boost entrepreneurship, and tech. So can Suleimania be a regional hub?
Yes, we can. We focused a lot on entrepreneurship, on innovation, on supporting youth, on introducing AI into our governance, in training a new cadre of youth, on development. But really touching back on your previous question, we've spent so much of our time building up the major cities of Kurdistan, Erbil, Duhok, Suleimania. We're now looking at rural development. How can we go beyond the big cities? You've been to Suleimania, you've been to Erbil, you should go to Duhok as well. I know many in the audience have been, and we've seen the development in the big cities. But now we want to move beyond the big cities. We want to move to the districts, to the sub-districts, because I think that's where the key to unlocking Kurdistan's real potential is. Because that's where the agricultural land is. That's where the industrial growth can happen. That's where a population which has not had access to maybe the latest technologies or the latest educational methods, with the right kind of inputs, could really exponentially grow Kurdistan's economy. And then that economy is not isolated. We are not on an island. Sometimes we wish we were. But the fact that we're not on an island means we have to make use of the relationships we have on the countries that are bordering us. We have a competitive advantage in certain areas. We may be able to fill the gaps that may exist in Iran, that may exist in Turkey, that may exist in Syria, that certainly exist in the rest of the country. And that's how we're positioning ourselves. We don't want to be a problem. We're not a threat to anyone's sovereignty. We're not a threat to anyone's territorial integrity. We're not a threat to anyone's security. We're an asset. And I think personally, I would say, an asset that is underutilized. You've had so many conversations about the war in Iran at this very forum. And with all due respect to many of the speakers that have spoken about it, but very few know Iran better than we do, right? And I think this is an opportunity for countries around the world that are interested in the Middle East. Come talk to us. Don't talk about us. I hear a lot of times being spoken about, sometimes positively, which is nice, sometimes not so positively, which is normal. But come and talk to us, because we can tell you what the Middle East is really like, what the Middle East has become. It is not the Middle East of the 70s and the 80s. It is a very different dynamic. And after this war, it will look even more different than it did a year ago. And we're here, we're free to talk to, and we're ready to talk to anyone who's interested.
So, since we're in Greece, I want to ask you how Greece can utilize this asset called Kurdistan. I know that you saw Greece's deputy prime minister, you saw half of the cabinet. So, what's the way forward regarding Greek-Kurdish relationship, which has been traditionally good and emotionally stable, I would say?
I think there's a two-way street here. I think we can benefit each other and support each other. I know that Greece, through its very dynamic government, is interested in engaging beyond its borders. Sometimes being part of this giant entity called Europe can be slow, can be obstructive. But I know that the government in Greece is interested in engaging more, playing a more productive role, potentially supporting this peace process, potentially supporting a deal between the United States and Iran. We can help in that. On the flip side, there's a lot that we can learn from Greece's development. How Greece has been able to manage its economic crisis, how it was able to come out of the ruins of its crisis, and where it is today economically is phenomenal. It's something Greeks should be proud of. We're certainly looking at it as a model of success. What Greece is doing in its digital transformation, I've met with your Minister of Digital Governance and AI, I've met with the Minister of Health and other ministries who all are showing pride in their use of technology and their digitization to improve services, to improve transparency. We're doing this too in Kurdistan, by the way. Maybe not as fast as Greece has been able to, but we are in the process of digitizing our government services, making services more transparent, making them less bureaucratic. So I think we can learn from your model. You can utilize our assets in the region, our ability to speak to East and to West. And I think there's a lot economically that could improve, especially now that Aegean is flying to the Kurdistan region. We're hoping for more flights. More flights means more tourists, and more tourists possibly means more investors, which means stronger partnerships and stronger friendships.
You know, usually people come to international fora, they discuss with each other, and there are no tangible deliverables. However, we had the tangible deliverables from your presence in Delphi Economic Forum, and this is the Delphi Forum in Slimani. So we want to talk a bit about it, which takes place, the second version is taking place on June 6th.
Yes, I think we have many of these forums in Kurdistan, but this was the first time that there was an international forum in the Kurdistan region that has a name, a reputable name associated with it. I think it was a great success. I'm hoping and expecting the next one to be a bigger success. So you're all welcome, Simon. Of course, Vasily, you're the star of the show, so you don't need an invitation. You are the show there. So we want to open Kurdistan up to the rest of the world, not just through politics, but to have serious discussions about regional development, about regional economy, about the contributions of Kurds historically and today, and vice versa, getting people to go beyond this stereotype of the Kurds,
So you're all invited to learn about Kurdistan beyond familiar headlines and stereotypes. Deputy Prime Minister, thank you indeed.
Thank you, Vasily.